Study session for November 23, 2020 to order. And the first item for discussion we have tonight is the joint youth council meeting. And I understand they're going to review the work plan with us. So I will trust that you guys have this under control, and we'll have the youth council pop up here. Hello, everyone. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Very good. So who is going to lead us through the youth council's introduction and work plan tonight?
That would be me. So good evening. My name is Hank Jones. I'm a sophomore at Harrison Prep, and I'll be the youth council lead for tonight's meeting.
Great.
Firstly, I'd like to thank the council for hosting this meeting and for the opportunity to discuss our work plan. So the rest of the youth council members are going to introduce themselves, and I'll be calling them up individually to tell us their name, grade, and their school. And I have to do that from the participants list. So firstly, Angel Lee, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, my name is Angel. I'm a junior at Harrison Prep along with Hank, and I also would like to thank you guys for being for allowing us the opportunity to have us here. And yeah, I go to Harrison Prep.
Good to see you.
Thank you. Next, Ariani.
Hi, I'm Esperon. I'm a sophomore at Clover Park High School. I look forward to discussing other things we can change and repair to make parks and outdoor activities just more enjoyable and safe.
Thank you. Next, Kayla Purdy.
Good evening. My name is Kayala. I'm a senior at Clover Park High School. I just wanted to thank you for your time and the opportunity to be here today.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Stephanie.
Hello, my name is Stephanie. Thank you for having us. I'm a freshman at Harrison Prep, and I really appreciate you guys taking your time to listen to our opinions.
Welcome.
Next up, Adriana.
Oh, hi, I'm Adriana. I'm a sophomore at Clover Park High School.
Thank you. Next up, I see Brandon Elliott just joined. Brandon.
Hi, my name is Brandon Elliott. I'm a sophomore at Harrison Prep.
Next up, I'm sorry if I mispronounced this, Tracy.
Hi, I'm Tracy Elizaga. I'm a sophomore at Clover Park High School. I just want to thank you for being here and taking the time and effort to have this meeting tonight.
Great. Welcome.
Next up, Gloria.
Hi, my name is Gloria Arauja. I'm a senior at Clover Park High School and also a returning member. Thank you for having us tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, so I believe that's everyone. If I didn't get to everyone, please come up to me and introduce yourself. Nope.
Denisha.
Denisha.
I'm a sophomore at Summit Olympus, and thank you for having the time to talk to us today.
Okay, thank you, Denisha. So now I believe that's everyone. In September, we chose youth council representatives for the city's boards and commissions, and they're going to each share something they have learned or looking forward to from these meetings. First up, I have Lakewood's Promise Advisory Board with Brandon Elliott.
Hi again. My name is Brandon Elliott, and I'm really glad to be on Lakewood's Promise Advisory Board this year. I've only been a part of the board for one meeting so far, but I've really appreciated how the board, especially Councilwoman Moss, has prioritized listening to the perspectives and ideas of young people. In our last meeting, the board asked the youth council liaisons how we could do better to address teen mental health. So we reached out to our classmates and other members of the youth council, and we can't wait to share their insight at our next meeting. I'm very excited to continue to be a part of this board throughout the year as they continue to work and make Lakewood a better place.
Thanks, Brandon.
Thank you, Brandon. Next, I have Arts Commission with Caleb Purdy.
Good evening again. I serve as a representative on the Arts Commission. One of the bed was during our Arts Commission retreat. And I can't wait to learn more about the different art forms because I think that the cultivation of plants in the garden is a form of art. So I'm just excited to see the art that Lakewood has to bring. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you. Next, I have MLK Committee with Denisha.
Hi again. So right now as MLK committee, we are making a slideshow or a video per se for the Martin Luther King holiday, and we're going to incorporate multiple cultures, and it's going to be a whole video about justice and what we can do for our community in Lakewood.
Thank you. Next, I have Community Services Advisory Board with Stephanie.
Hello, I'm Stephanie. We haven't had our meeting yet, but one thing I look forward to talking about in the Community Service Advisory Board meeting is of how we could help people in need during this pandemic. And the reason I joined this meeting is because I've always, since I was little, liked to help people without asking anything in return. So I really enjoyed helping people just out of kindness.
Great.
Thank you, Stephanie. Next, I have Parks and Recreation Advisory Board with Ariani. Ariani, are you there? Thank you.
Hi again, I'm Ariani. I really look forward to what I already this at first, but I do really look forward to the changes and repairs we can make to the parks and the outdoor activities here in Lakewood to just make it more presentable and enjoyable. In our recent meetings, we usually discuss like old things that are usually at parks that we can just change and rebuild just to make it look more nice.
Thank you. Lastly, I had Public Safety Advisory Board with Josephine Kaiser. I don't believe she's here. Okay, so if she's not here, I'd like to move on. Denisha Ships will now go over upcoming topics and events.
Hi, thank you. Some upcoming topics and events that we have with the Youth Council will be Reverse Holiday Parade on December 12th. So on December 12th will be it'll be like a drive-by parade. The cars will drive, we hand out goodie bags. Next we'll have a park board presentation with Parks Capital Projects and Mary Donsworth. The next event will be Youth Citizen Academy with Lakewood PD Mike Zero. A senior youth conversation with Elizabeth Sky and Senior Activity Center. And finally, a potential youth summit. It'll be a virtual summit as well. Thank you.
Great.
And that's everything. I'd like to again thank the council for reviewing our work plan. Does the city council have any questions?
Well, thanks, Hank. I'll open it up to the council members and see if they have any questions or comments for you, folks. Anyone have any questions or comments? I got to pull my chat bar there. Mr. Brandstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I'm glad to do that, and I welcome the council both to this meeting and to this year of activities. That I think that we're extremely fortunate to have you all in this year of when communicating with the community is both important and challenging to be able to go and do that. I did have a couple of questions about the items that are on your work plan. Could someone elaborate a little bit about how the reverse holiday parade on the 12th is going to have the support of the Youth Council and how you envision participating in that?
I can explain it. So the youth council will be just kind of like waving to people and giving out goodie bags to some people, I believe. And it will kind of just will be us. How I'll put this. We'll be interacting with the people, not physically touching them because of COVID, but we'll be like saying hi to people, welcoming people to the community, and just being present so they know we're still there and we still have an activity for them.
So you'll be clearly identifiable as the youth council as people move past?
Yes, we will.
All right, that's good. And then my other question was, in part because I wasn't sure that I had heard about it before, is the Youth Citizens Academy, where it looks like sometime in March, you and the police chief are getting together around that. What do we know about what's that going to look like, and is that a reprise of something, or is it a new initiative to connect youth and with the police department and other public safety folks?
Well, Councilman, I don't know on that particular item. I think the person who would be most equipped to answer that question would be our Public Safety Advisory Board liaison, Josephine, who, as I mentioned, isn't here tonight. So I can pass it along to her.
Oh, okay. Well, again, it is 4 months or more down the road, and but would be interested because we've come through a time and are in the midst of a time of community communication with public safety is gotten a lot of attention.
Of course.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, that's all that I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me ask the general question to all of you. So how is it going with trying to do the remote learning? Challenges? Everything going swimmingly? What do you think?
For me, it started off good. I did have some bumps in the road, but I'm continuing to do good, and I'm really excited to finish off the school year and go to college. So yeah, I did have some trouble, but I'm back on track and I'm doing really, really good. Yeah.
Great. Anybody else? It's been too easy for everyone else?
I can go. For me, it has been a little difficult, but I'm doing a lot better than I would have been doing a year ago. My grades are on the right track for where I want to go to college, which is Howard University. And I'm doing a lot of academic programs outside of school.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very helpful for me.
I'll go. I could think one of the most difficult things for me through online learning is probably just not being able to be with people in person, which I think is a big thing for everyone. Also, just being able to pay attention like through a screen. I think I'm more of I think we all are. We all like to learn in person. So that's been a challenge for me. I'm definitely adjusting to it now, though.
Great.
I definitely agree. I think the toughest aspect to adapt to has been not being able to see any of my friends. I really miss that.
Yeah.
But academically, I think it's also been a struggle to adapt. But I think I speak for a lot of the kids in my district when I say that I think we're getting the hang of it just fine.
For me personally, it has been a learning opportunity, like getting to know how to use these new applications and just get a grasp and be more in touch with technology for sure. And I think I find myself communicating more with my teachers and seeking for help more in terms of emailing and stuff. So I like that about online learning.
Mm-hmm. One of the topics of conversation you guys have in your work plan is a discussion about mental health challenges facing youth. And do you think that that has been something that would be even more important given the whole COVID thing you've all experienced when you've gone through this last semester? The lack of the ability to see one another or have as much camaraderie as you might otherwise have?
I think that contributes to it. Like school for a lot of people is their place to like escape, and it's their social outlet and how they see their friends. And now a lot of people are just finding it they're at home, it's raining all the time, and it's just kind of lonely, you know?
Yeah, very much.
I definitely agree with what Brandon said, and especially for new students, for those at all of our schools, they're probably having a lot of difficulties trying to adapt as well, especially since they don't know anyone or can't get help within their peers until they get to know each other.
Yeah, it'd be very difficult to go into a brand new school and, you know, be excited about that transition either from elementary school to middle school or middle school to high school, and then all of a sudden have everything kind of stop and not have the interactivity that one would expect and look forward to as a new student. So challenging for all, but I'm glad that you leaders are stepping up and doing some great things, or at least addressing the topics, you know, of interest with all the youth. So, you guys have any questions for us as we go forward? Thank you for your presentations, and I think that there are, Linda, Councilmember Farmer has a question for you before I ask you folks for other questions.
I too wanted to add my thanks for stepping up and being a part of this, given everything else going on. It's not really a normal year. There's nothing normal about it. But I was curious how you guys might define success. You get to June, you get to your wrap-up party, and what does success look like when you get there?
I think personally for me, success is when you can say that you're proud of the effort that you put into your work and the outcome of it. And that's what success to me is when you just have like the personal, you know, pride in your work and your accomplishments.
I agree. I think success looks different for everyone. I think as long as you're satisfied with the work that you put in, and I think like not letting other people define success for you. I think like when you can focus on yourself and define success for yourself, I think that is what can make you successful.
I agree. I think that in a business type situation, the goal is to get to this objective as a team with everyone else. And I think it's a great analogy to compare it to our community too, as both for all of us, not just youth, but you know, working together to get to the end goal, which is to build a safe space for all of our community members.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Councilmember Moss, you had your hand up for a question.
Yeah, thank you. Since Councilmember Farmer asked the question I had in mind, I will just say to you guys, I am proud of you for stepping up, taking the leadership role. I'm looking forward to working with you. Brandon, when we meet at the Promise Board meeting, it's going to be, I've been looking forward to your updates on the mental health and how you're becoming involved and what you are doing with that and how we can help you with that. So I thank all of you for taking the leadership role. You rock. Thank you.
Well, thanks guys and gals. I appreciate your enthusiasm and leadership and stepping up during these challenging times. We're going to all get through this together, and we're looking forward to having a little holiday cheer when you guys are on the static display and we get to pass by and wave to you all and enjoy that on December 12th. So try to encourage other folks to participate by coming and being part of the cheer of the season, because if there's any reason for the season, it is this year, because it has been crazy being apart from one another. So I appreciate seeing all of you tonight. I know the Mayor, Don Anderson, extends his well wishes to you and hopes for a fabulous end of the fall semester for each one of you. So thank you for coming tonight. Anything else, Hank?
That was all that we had on our agenda, but I'd like to thank the council again. Thank you guys for your time.
Well, thank you all, and I'll let you guys get back to dinner or to the piles of homework you may have. So, all right, good night. Take care. Okay,
Thank
next.
you.
Thank you. Great to see you all. Next, we have a review of the 2021 Comprehensive Plan amendments, and for this we have our planning manager, Tiffany Spear.
Good evening, Mr. Deputy Mayor and members of the council. Can you hear me all right? Okay, thank you. This topic has a memo that begins on page 5 of your packet for this week, but I'm also going to be sharing my screen for the next couple of topics, actually, beginning with, as I said, the 2021 Comprehensive Plan Map and Text Amendment Cycle docket. So this came to you preliminarily, I want to say almost 2 months ago, where you took a look at the initial list and then gave it a preliminary okay, and it went off to the Planning Commission, and they have since taken action on a recommendation to you as to what should be included in the 2021 docket list, for comprehensive plan amendments. Just an overview, there needs to be, in addition to what action the council would be taking next week to approve the docket list, there also will be SEPA review, Department of Commerce review, and then again, once the substantive documents and SEPA review are completed, it'll go back to the Planning Commission for a public hearing and recommendation to you. And then next, I believe it'll be May or June, you will see this packet again in a much more fleshed out fashion. It was October 21st when the Planning Commission passed their motion, bringing this list to you, and it includes the 7 items that you saw in September. They did add 1 item based on public comment that was submitted during their public hearing in October. And then there are actually 4 more additional amendments for the council to review tonight that are a combination of requests and communications from council members, as well as some staff research. So what was provided to you from the Planning Commission are these 8 amendments. First of all, the replacement of the sustainability chapter currently within the comprehensive plan with an energy and climate change chapter, and that's going to be a much more robust. It is being drafted in part with grant funding dollars that the City of Lakewood qualified for from Department of Commerce to seek out some additional expertise regarding greenhouse gas emissions and other climate change factors. The second one is an update to the comprehensive plan policies and texts regarding Springbrook, given the fact that last year the council rezoned many of the Springbrook parcels to industrial. The third update is reflecting the fact that the City Parks Legacy Plan was updated and adopted by council this year. The fourth is relating to a number of different types of housing types within the city code and zoning requirements and allowances being updated based on state statute updates and legislative action. The fifth is updating the the comprehensive plan with information regarding Western State Hospitals, whether it's the master plan, whether that'll be complete by the time this would be adopted, or other work that they are doing on their campus, as well as other public and semi-public institutional uses within the city. The sixth is amendments related to the adoption of what's already been done, which is the Downtown Sub-Area Plan and the ongoing Lakewood Station District Sub-Area Plan. So that is scheduled for your action by next spring, and so it'll be incorporated into the 2021 Comprehensive Plan amendments as well. The Seventh Amendment Planning Commission recommended was the potential inclusion or creation and inclusion of a new center of local importance that would be focused on industrial development over on the east side of the city. And then the eighth is one that I'll spend a little more time on shortly, but this is the one that came from a private request. And this actually was raised in the 2020 docket list. And then as we moved forward, the decision was made not to proceed with this amendment a year ago, but this would be looking at parcels near the Berkeley interchange in Tillicum and rezoning that, reflecting the construction and expansion at the I-5 area right there along with interchanges. So the four additional items that have come forward since those other 8 that the Planning Commission saw were some amendments requested related to Springbrook again, and actually 2021-09 as an amendment could be rolled into the 2021-02, also related to Springbrook, and just create a single one there. There's another one related to highest and best use of commercial lands. There is one related to expanding the list of water supply related facilities within Lakewood's municipal code at chapter 18A40. And then there is a amendment that is responding to a bill that was passed this last legislative session, ESSB 1724, which relates to religious organizations hosting of the homeless. So what I'll do very quickly is to go through these that you've already seen. As I just mentioned, was the sustainability chapter being expanded. This is the draft outline of the new energy and climate change chapter. Speaking to its purpose, the context behind it in state statute, potential impacts of climate change within the city of Lakewood and then Puget Sound, some sort of greenhouse gas emission inventory, key findings and recommendations coming out of that inventory, and other studies regarding climate change in our area. And then the goals, policies, and programs that Lakewood has already done, including some that may be items for the future, and then an implementing action section. 2021-02, as I mentioned briefly, was related to Springbrook parcels being rezoned in the 2020 cycle, and so this would move forward. There are areas within the comprehensive plan where there's reference to Springbrook and some outdated now language regarding it being used for industrial growth. The Parks Legacy Plan update one I think is pretty self-explanatory. The housing and other requirements related to missing middle housing in particular, and additional encouragement of accessory dwelling units would be added under 2021-04. 05 again is Western State Hospital, and then also public and semi-public institutional uses throughout the city. Reflecting the downtown sub-area plan and adoption of the Lakewood Station District sub-area plan next spring is 06. And then we'll get into a little more detail. I believe we spoke some about this in October, if I've got my dates right. But the 07 one that's proposing the potential new center of local importance focused on industrial development would take the areas currently included in COLI number 4 and number 5, which are circled on that map there on the right-hand side of the screen, and combining them into a new one, but also removing some of the parcels included within them if they are not industrial related zones. So going to the next page, you'll see what that might look like. Excuse me. And you have in the zones remaining for this potential COLI, Air Corridor 1 and 2, Commercial 2, Industrial 1, Industrial Business Park. There's just a tiny bit of Neighborhood Commercial 2, and then public institutional would be the dark blue. This is a very large area, as you can see on the left side of the screen there. It's 1,200 acres roughly, but this is all subject to change as the city, if this gets included, were to move forward with studying and refining where the boundaries for this COLI might be. Going back to the citywide map and just showing in reference to the rest of the city how this would fit, you'll see it in this circled area. And again, it's the one reason it's here is not only the current zoning in the area and the development that's occurred because of it, but you'll see here the 512 and I-5 interchanges. You see rail access is right here. So it's a natural freight corridor in any event, both for existing businesses and potential businesses to come to Lakewood and enjoy. There was a question raised, sorry, it was back in August when this came to you, about whether the industrial COLI establishment would affect the district that's there called the International District, and also whether it would affect zoning or other uses included on some of those parcels that are long established. And the answer to that is no. The idea here is we're creating a center of local importance that would eventually qualify for regional transportation funding through PSRC and perhaps other federal funding project opportunities as well. It would not affect zoning of anything in particular, whether it be an area or a particular parcel. The idea at this point is simply to designate this center and then be able to pursue those funding dollars as well. So the way the comprehensive plan is currently written, just for reference as well, is there are policies in place that promote individual neighborhood character in areas including the International District, and then also encouraging the ongoing development of an identity for the International District. So that language is already within the city's comprehensive plan, and that would not change with the establishment of this new industrial center of local importance. Then we get into the one comp plan amendment request that came out of public hearing at the Planning Commission level. And the initial request was to zone just 3 parcels, rezone them from residential 3 to neighborhood commercial 2. And the actual language within the request was that as a new major gateway for the Tillicum area, it would be a better use for this block to zone it NC2 rather than R3. After looking at this, in a little more detail, the way staff is presenting this to you and the way the Planning Commission approved it was that it's actually affecting more than just those 3 specific parcels, and it would require a little more analysis to figure out exactly which parcels would be involved in a potential rezone. So a little history here. First of all, these are maps of where the parcels we're talking about are located, So where you see the circle and then actually these 2 here as well. And so you'll see that it's 3 parcels in a row. And then if we get to an aerial view, it's those 3 parcels. And then you can see the proximity. First of all, this is Berkeley Street. Here is I-5. So what we're talking about is property very close to the new interchange and I-5 expansion that's ongoing as we speak. The DOT project list here is referring to exit 122, which is Berkeley, and the fact that that is getting totally rebuilt, and the I-5 itself is getting expanded. As it sits right now, things are working to get completed by next summer, but significant work has happened already on this project. Just one aerial photo of progress to date. On October 24th, so about a month ago, the southbound lanes were shifted once again. And right now they just have a temporary speed limit reduction, but they are at this point talking about June 2021 of getting this project done. In the current comprehensive plan, I won't read all of this verbatim, but just to point out to you as a council that there is a section specifically about Tillicum. The fact that it is identified as a center of local importance itself, and it has been for a while. And then down on the bottom, you'll see there is an adopted Tillicum neighborhood plan as of June 2011, as well as a number of other comprehensive plan goals and strategies. One of which right here is minimizing geographic isolation, but also providing for commercial and service uses for residents within the neighborhood of Tillicum, and also increasing pedestrian bicycle paths accessibility to connect to other neighborhoods. There's also goal land use 52, including improving the quality of life for Tillicum residents, and then implementing as necessary, updating the Tillicum community plan. This is a map of the center of local importance in Tillicum. And so again, we're talking about down here with this particular comprehensive plan amendment request. This is Berkeley Street, and then you have the I-5 interchange that's getting updated right now. One more thing here, this is out of the 2011 Tillicum neighborhood plan. And there was an acknowledgement there, which is almost 10 years ago, that the commercial district was changing in this area, and the extension of sewer into this area also was allowing for higher density development, be it residential or commercial industrial. At the bottom, you see, again, from the neighborhood plan, that the idea was to create a basis for further development of specific zoning regulations. This was a map that precedes even the 2011 plan. This is back from 1980, before Growth Management Act, before the City of Lakewood Incorporated. But what you see anticipated here is this lighter orange was commercial, and then the area in question was multifamily residential. And if we fast forward to right now, what you see here again is the single family zone, and then it's being requested now to upzone that to a land use designation of neighborhood business district. What that translates into in terms of zoning is neighborhood commercial 2, 35 units per acre should residential development happen in there. Right now under R3, it's 4.8 units per acre. And what I have included for you in your packet is actually a summary table that explains not only the residential dwelling unit density that's allowed in these two zones, but all of the other types of uses allowed in either one, just for your reference. So if this were to move forward and we were to rezone to NC2, it would be the same as what you see here, this existing bright pink on the zoning map into those 3 parcels. So the recommendation that came from the Planning Commission to you was to actually move ahead with considering this application, but expanding it beyond just those 3 specific parcels and looking at this whole area of Tillicum to include both sides of Berkeley Street and see where it made sense to perhaps rezone either just those 3 parcels or something else. I'll go on and finish the other 4 and then leave it open for council discussion. So these are the other 4 amendments that have come forward either by staff initiation at this point or suggestion and recommendation from city council members. The first is number 09, and this refers again to Springbrook. And the idea here was to make some specific edits within land use goal 53 and its subsections. This is one that I would suggest perhaps get rolled into number 2, because that is also an amendment proposal related to the Springbrook neighborhood rezone. Number 10 would be a specific update to land use 18, just to remove the idea of the community renewal area. I'm not aware of any of these being in place by the city, but there's certainly work reinvigorating in economically blighted areas in Lakewood through other means, whether it be economic development focuses or sub-area planning or some other tool. Number 11 is that change to Chapter 18A40 in the Lakewood Municipal Code, expanding the list of water supply related facilities. And then the last one would be the idea of the religious organizations hosting homeless. And these are excerpts out of the actual bill, ESB 1754, explaining the brackets within that bill that the Lakewood amendment would need to comply with. So other than that, where we sit in the process is this evening is your discussion about these suggested docket items. December 7th, 2 weeks from tonight, would be when a resolution would be before you to take action. At that point, staff would pick it up and start the substantive review of the proposed docket list and prepare its recommendations. It would be back in front of the Planning Commission next spring, and then by late spring, early summer, the Planning Commission recommendation would be in front of you. You would be adopting it probably end of June, early July of 2021. So I'll stop sharing with that and see if there's any questions from you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Back up just to the list. We passed through a couple of them. Number 4.
Sure. Hang on one second. Get you back up there. The various housing types one?
Right. So, I mean, we already have code amendments that allowed for cottage housing and encouraged ADUs, right? So is this just kind of being consistent with that?
It's being consistent with that, but there continues to be some additional, I don't know if I would call it pressure, but additional encouragement from the state legislature, the governor's office, and then action at the regional level by Puget Sound Regional Council to work on housing and housing affordability issues. And so there are additional best practices and new ideas that are being thrown out there for cities to chew on and decide if they want to incorporate them. And so it's a very nebulous amendment at this point for you to be able to hear about, but that's where it's coming from.
Got it. I know we're going to talk a little bit more about some of that tonight on the housing side. Any other questions from members of the council?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor or Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Brandstetter first, and then you, Mr. Boki.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor and Ms. Spear, I appreciate the presentation, and I understand that many of these are still not in final form. They are items on a docket that are in concept that need need work on the text, and some of which, such as the Lakewood Station District Plan and the Western State Hospital Master Plan and other things, are hopefully will inform the final wording as those things come to pass during the window in which these get considered. I am fine with the docket as it is, and with the suggestion of rolling the land use items of Springbrook altogether into one docket item. I think that's consistent, and I appreciate the fact that some of the other items reflect not just taking a single action and then in a following year having to go back and make amendments to accommodate the first action. And it seems like we're being much more deliberate about doing that. I think that the one item on the docket that I am most interested in looking at and to just see whether it really serves the best interests of the community in a holistic way is the update to change the center of local importance of 4 and 5 and roll them together into a single one. And while I hear that there aren't going to be any zoning changes together with that, the communication that in the long term we view the current international district migrating towards being an industrial area concerns me, given the fact that the current statement about the commercial importance of that area is still very valid. And to delete that language from the comprehensive plan, I think the text needs to be worded very clearly so that it's not misunderstood about being unsupportive of the businesses and peoples whose livelihood are currently dependent on that area, and how that area contributes to the council's vision of the community of leveraging the diversity to be able to go and do that. But again, that's all a question to really look at how things are finally. So it does seem that the Planning Commission and staff are taking on a lot to chew to get this ready to deal with here in 7 months. And so I think, I mean, in by and large, the comprehensive plan is one of the most important things that this body manages, because the community that of the future is predicated by what we put into the plan and code. That's all I have, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Branstetter, Mr. Boki.
Hey, Tiffany, a couple of questions. One, how did the water thing get in there? And is it something we just haven't done, or was it just a special request? I kind of find it interesting that we had water things in there and now we're being asked to expand it.
This is a refinement based on the Title 18A update. So if you remember, that was adopted in 19. Here we are in 20, having had a chance to use it for a little bit. And we're just finding little pieces that need to be cleaned up or corrected. And this is one of those things. So.
Okay. And then explain the church one. Is this something that's being imposed by what's the depth of this thing that this is being imposed by the state?
This is a bill that was adopted by the state. And if you don't mind, I'm going to open this up one more time because it gives you
please, yeah,
the language. Sorry, this will make everybody dizzy. Hang on. There we go. Okay. Oops. So this is the language directly out of the statute, and it allows religious organizations to host temporary encampments And counties and cities and towns are prohibited from enacting an ordinance or regulation, taking any action that, and then you see those 3 sub bullets. So this is just making sure, A, that religious organizations are allowed to do what this bill allows, and also that any rules that the city were to adopt about those organizations hosting these encampments don't violate any of those sub bullets. So it is, yes, it's a state rule that we're having to follow to come to the end of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I'll be interested to see. I mean, I go to the most of the planning commission meetings. I'm kind of interested in the Tillicum one because I don't know that we've given them good direction on how we want Tillicum to look.
Right.
Because I don't know that we've had any heart-to-heart conversations about now that they're putting in sewers and whatnot, and nor I don't know the last time we've had a community meeting out there with the members and the folks who live out there as to how they want everything to look. And I guess I'll be interested to see what kind of conversations they have, but I'm wondering if at some point in time we need to have if there's ever a post-COVID, some meetings out there where we kind of get, and then we need to, I think as a council, really have a heart-to-heart conversation about, how do we want that place to look too? Because I don't know what the residents out there will say. Clearly landowners have some idea who may or may not be residents out there, especially as they're closer to the I-5 corridor. They may have ideas about what the general public doesn't, and we're going to end up having, or the people who live out there, and we're going to end up being the tiebreaker, I have a feeling. But so I'll be interested to see how that plays out, because with the specific request that has come before them and their willingness to look at that specific request. But I think eventually time's going to run out and we're going to have to make some decisions about how we want that place to look.
And to respond to that, Mr. Boki, I agree with you, first of all. Second of all, we started to put together just the brief overview that you see tonight, and what the Planning Commission saw is the fact that you have a neighborhood plan that's now 10 years old, and you do have the sewer that's come through since that plan was written. What you may end up with is a recommendation next spring that says, again, hold off on any sort of rezoning. It's time to take a look at that neighborhood plan again and update it, or some other tool where you have a more in-depth discussion with the public in the Tillicum area. I'm not sure if that's where we'll end up, but that's a possibility.
Let me ask you on that.
Thank you. I'm done.
Yeah, let me ask you on that point, Tiffany, if we go back to the picture on the proposed NC2 redesignation over by Berkeley and Grant, it really, in the Grant area, it's kind of outside of the COLI just a little bit. So what is staff's thought at this point? I know there's no firm recommendation yet about the NC2 creep all the way up to Berkeley from Grant.
There is no thought other than to say, with this change of the interchange and how that will be affecting parcels immediately adjacent to it, is that going to turn into a different economic desire for that area? Is there going to be more people getting off of the off-ramp right there and wanting to go to some sort of commercial establishment or not?
Yeah, it makes sense to do that, I think.
Yeah.
Mr. Whalen, this is Mr. Buer. I will have to indicate to the council that I have some concerns about commercial creep occurring in the residential neighborhoods. And in that particular area, some of that area is fairly well established. So that's going to be an issue that the Planning Commission and City Council will wrestle with as this application moves forward.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to take a hard look at that once the interchange is done and see what impact that really has. Because you may find that people don't want to live under the shadow of a concrete, trestle, as opposed to maybe having a business there. But yeah, it's worthy of discussion down the road. There's quite a bit of concrete going through that area right now. Anything else, Ms. Spear, on that particular topic?
No, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, sorry.
So today's just kind of our brief overview of where we are.
Yeah, and 2 weeks from now, you'll have a resolution in front of you for action.
Not necessarily adopting anything, but moving it back to the planning commission, correct?
It's a resolution that says this is the docket that now staff and planning commission will take on again.
We all get to chew on it one more time. Okay.
Correct.
Well, thank you for your effort. I appreciate it. And so without further ado, I think we're going to move on to item number 3, which is review of the 2018 Washington State Building Code amendments. And it looks like we have Mr. Dobbs from West Pierce Fire and not our building official, Rafiq, or not? Or both?
Yes, I'm here.
Mr. Gindi, fabulous.
Yes, sir.
Well, I'll let you folks take it from here.
Good evening, Mr. Deputy Mayor, council members. I'm Rafiq Gindi, the city building official. And in front of you is the proposed adoption for the new 2018 building codes. The state building code council has delayed the adoption of the codes that's supposed to be effective July 1st to February 1st, 2021, which is due to the COVID pandemic. The RCW allows municipalities, cities, and counties to add items to the codes. So the State Code Council takes the national codes, the ICC published codes, and the state adopted with modifications. And the RCW also allows for cities, municipalities to amend it if they want to add some items to the code for that applicable to the local jurisdiction. With that, there is a caveat that the residential code, the jurisdictions cannot amend that without going back to the State Building Code Council. So we're only allowed to do the other codes locally through ordinances, but the IRC, the International Residential Code, which impacts single-family residents, has to go back to the State Building Code Council for approval. None of the proposals that are in front of you provides new changes in the International Residential Code. As you see in the memo that I have provided, most of the items on the list are adding language to match the WAC that's adopted, and adding few sections that allows flexibility and clarification for the public when they are requesting alternate method request or bringing something that is not adopted by the code. With that, nothing major that I would say that it's a change from previous code adoptions that the city of Lakewood has. Very minor changes. And like I mentioned earlier, it's for mostly clarification to questions that I've been getting about the code that's been adopted, and also questions about where does it list which code. With that, I'm open to any questions. Or the fire department also may have items that they may want to add to my comments.
Michael Dobbs, West Pierce. No, Rafiq and I have worked on our amendments, and I don't really see any change to the fire code. It's really just cleaning up the language and clarifying things at this point.
So what, if any, of these new adjusted provisions will be dramatic in terms of change to the building industry, if any?
I'm reading through. I think the I think it may be the change that because that would be. I'm going to talk about our changes, our City of Lakewood amendments to the code. I'm not going to talk about the state amendments and the new codes that are coming. Something that I've noticed, and I discussed it with Chief Dobbs, the amount of requests for permit extensions that I've been getting through. And as we are operating based on an 85% cost.
Mr. Gindi, I think you've frozen a little bit. You mentioned the word cost, and our system freezes up when we have any talk of money.
Mr. Whalen, the section that Mr. Gindi is speaking to is found on page 42,
Okay.
where it talks about the time limitations for a permit that's processed.
Got it.
That is the section that he is referencing.
Okay.
We're allowing people, I believe, an applicant 2 times to come in and request extensions. And after the second time, if they wish to do so, we're trying to recoup some of our costs for additional plan review.
Got it.
I think that's the only one, that one on page 42 and the top of page 43.
Okay. So
In my opinion, the rest of these amendments are pretty straightforward and frankly non-controversial.
Years ago, Mr. Buer, we had conversations about sprinkler systems, as you may recall. I forget, it was 8 years ago or 6 or whatever, it's been a while. But I noticed on page 45 of the packet, we're increasing to 5,000 square feet, the gross area by which one must then have approved sprinkler systems. It used to be like 42 or 4,300. Is that a material change? Is there a reason for that from West Pierce's perspective?
I could answer that. 5,000's been our threshold, and I think for 2 code cycles. The language there cleans up how it's applied. We were duplicating language which was already required at the state level. So Rafik did a good job going through and making sure we weren't having duplicate language or contrary language to the state. The one thing that we did change on, I'm trying to find it, page 46, number 4 at the top of the page, for a group M occupancy with displaying upholstered furniture and mattresses. It was at 500 square feet. It was very restrictive. And we've ran into trouble with businesses wanting to come in. So we increased that to a more reasonable amount based on the fuel load that's stored in that area.
Fuel meaning the upholstered furniture. I know there was a business owner on Silicon Boulevard that was cranky with us.
Yeah, that one is exactly, it was very troublesome. He still would have had the sprinkler. He was large enough. He expanded into 4 suites without a permit. He still would have been captured under that, but 500 was just incredibly restrictive and unnecessary.
Got it. Well, that's helpful. Thank you for that. Any other questions by members of council? Mr. Brand, let's see, Mr. Brandstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Mr. Gindi, regarding this section on time limitations, which is on page 42, adding section 105.32, there's a section in there that says additional extension requests will be subject to administrative fees. Were these fees included in the fee schedule update that we approved a week ago?
Yes, Your Honor. To my knowledge, it is part of the new fee schedule. And it's not going to be applied except after a third request. So we allow, we allow 2 requests without a fee. That gives them 180 and 180. That's a 360 days. It gives them a year. But after that, we'll have to, we're going to be charging an administrative fee due to the time spent by permitting staff and myself.
Okay, on that same page, on page 42 of our packet, there is a section up above of where most of the changes seem to have been generated by a change in that they're re-lettering paragraphs. But it made a change to where on the draft that I've got in front of me, the paragraph J is omitted. And I'm wondering, is there a missing paragraph J that's intended to be in the amendment? Or are the 2 K and L paragraphs also supposed to be relettered because there is no paragraph J?
I'm looking at amendments, and I think it was a typo that we missed in the lettering. But if we go, it should have been section 111.1, change of occupancy, which is I, then it should be a J, then a K.
Okay.
We'll work on fixing that.
Okay. If I could ask you, just point out something on page 49 of our packet, where there is the definition of fire department and the definition of fire chief. And that fire department means West Pierce Fire District. And I'm just not aware of the organization being called that. It's always been West Pierce Fire and Rescue since the 2 districts combined. And that same thing would be in those 2 paragraphs there. If we could check what the West Pierce would like, how they would like their title codified, that would be good before next week. And then starting on page 53, there are a whole lot of references to, apparently the IPMC changed and began using the term public officer. And so we've got a whole lot of things that are just changing public official to public officer. But within those sections on pages 53, 54, 55, and 56, that is a section that relates primarily to essentially public nuisances. And it talks about when things are, when buildings and structures, but also premises are unsafe or have situations that make them unable to be safely developed, being able to go and do this. And this is an area that the council has had some discussions about, in that particularly with related to a number of properties in the downtown area, of where whether or not we could do some things where owners are not mediating particularly environmental hazards, but also some other things. And I noticed that we're not actually proposing any language or Lakewood City amendments to this language in this. But would this be an area that some amendments to language would facilitate code enforcement leading towards abatement and orders to fix things. I'm sort of wondering, and I don't know whether this is a question for Mr. Buer or for you, Mr. Gindi, in those sections that are in that that set of pages from 54 through 56.
If I may start, the change, so the 2 points that I'd like to respond to. One is the code official versus public officer. I struggled with the changes. For some reason, the Word document kept on the ordinance as it is right now indicates public officer. So the 2015 building codes lists public officer. I was entertaining using a code official, but I decided to strike that out and just keep it as a public officer because this is how we've been practicing it. So whether it shows up on the draft document we have, the final document, it should say public officer, which is not a change from anything we have right now. The second point, this is here, although it's based on the IPMC and the RCW, but this is what we use within the city for guidelines to do our code enforcement and abatement process. We try to follow what's in the RCW and what's in the IPMC for the steps to enforce and the due process to get to abatement of buildings. Environmental issues, I think that's the best of my knowledge, that's being handled by a separate state agency, and they coordinate with us. So we, as a building department and building code, enforcement of environmental provisions, environmental violations, we have to leave it to the state agency as the governing agency. Mr. Buer may have more to add to that, but that's where we stand as a building department about enforcing environmental issues.
If I can add just a few things to Mr. Gindi's comments. I'm not sure that the international construction codes would be the best place to identify property maintenance or environmental issues. If that's something that the council wishes to proceed, it might be best to handle with existing public nuisance and dangerous building abatement regulations and or our international property maintenance regulations, which are separate from the ICCs this evening. We can certainly go back and take a look at this, and if this is something the council wants to pursue, we can make other amendments at a later date. But tonight, the focus is on the construction codes and getting this approved prior to February 1st, 2021.
Okay, well, Mr. Buer, as the code that we're looking at refers to premises and speaks to premises having conditions what makes them unfit for human habitation or for other use, and that seems to be one of the problematic problems we have with the number of properties within the downtown area where they're located in places where we'd like redevelopment to happen, but our code enforcement efforts haven't extended to that because we've been, as Mr. Gindi says, focused on the safety of buildings and not of the premises, which is really the problem of getting going forward. So, you know, I don't know whether expounding on that, actually, as I read the language here, it almost seems to read like we could take action based on premises being a health and safety hazard because of environmental concerns. So maybe it's more a question of, as you say, in some of our other codes of where that guide practice rather than having to make an amendment here. But I would just note that it does seem that the international code allows municipalities such as Lakewood and its appropriate officials to recognize situations on premises that make them unsafe and unusable for economic development purposes. And I guess I understand that the changing public officer to public officer is just an editing issue that'll go away in the final draft, and that's fine. Mr. Deputy Mayor, that's all that I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a real quick comment for Councilmember Branstetter regarding the whole issue of abatements and environmental cleanup and such. This is something that our economic development team is beginning to review and undertake, and we hope to be able to have something for council review, or at least an update on what we can do sometime in first or early second quarter of next year.
Just briefly to Mr. Branstetter's, I think, comment, if I understand it correctly, is there any other language tweaks that we should or could make here that would enhance the city's ability to have more teeth in its code for purposes of premises abatement?
I don't have that information right now, Deputy Mayor, because again, our economic development team is just getting underway with this analysis. We've identified some properties, and we're now reaching out to both the Department of Ecology and the Tacoma Pierce Health Department regarding this. So it could be that this is an area that we're going to want to make some code amendments, but it could be another part of our code. So again, to be determined. Again, the reasoning for bringing this forward here is, a regular and routine update that we're required to follow every 3 years.
Got it. So this doesn't preclude us from doing something further down the road.
It does not.
Right. Very good. I see no other further hands up. Gentlemen, thank you for your attention to this. We appreciate you coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good night.
Good night. Next, we're going to turn to our planning manager, Tiffany Spear, once again for review of the South Sound Housing Affordability Partnership and an update on the program.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, member of the council. Tiffany Spear once more. This begins on page 58 of your packet this evening, but again, I'm going to be working my way through a PowerPoint presentation, so just 1 second.
It might be even easier, for sure. There's a lot to this.
Okay, so the acronym that's going to be used a lot tonight is SHAPE, but what that stands for your information, is South Sound Housing Affordability Partners. And I'm going to be giving a little bit of a walk through history to begin with, but ultimately the question is coming before the council tonight is, first of all, does the city want to continue to support this group overall? And secondly, assuming that question is yes, what sort of financial support would the city be comfortable with planning and budgeting for the years 2021 and 2022? And of course, that's very timely given where you are in your budgeting process. So to begin. This came out of a group that started in 2019, and at the time it was Pierce County Executive Dan Meyer, County Councilwoman Ladenburg, and Mayor of Tacoma, Mayor Woodards. invited mayors from all of the jurisdictions in the county to meet in a just a informal, at that point, group that they termed the Mayor's Roundtable, Housing Affordability and the Impacts on Our Community. And rather than what we're talking about right now related to housing affordability, which is trying to make sure people can stay in their homes given COVID impacts, at that point it was the increasing disparity between people's incomes and housing prices for a number of different reasons. The much faster increase in housing prices versus payroll and income increases. So during 2019, the group met about 6 times, and they had a number of subject matter experts come and speak to them, whether they be nonprofit developers, for-profit developers, both single and multifamily. They had several panel discussions and had realtors as well as builders and developers involved with that. They also had local experts who work with the nonprofit housing world, as well as people from the region. I believe they had somebody from the Seattle area come and speak to them as well. They also had Dr. Ali Madaris from UW-T work on a study of the region, Puget Sound, but also Pierce County specific, related to current housing availability and affordability. And that report ultimately was completed in 2020 with a number of appendices and expansions from its original scope. The Pierce County staff also reached out to jurisdictions around the county to try to ID public land that might be, quote, surplused and used for housing instruction, meaning it was property that the city or county was never going to be using. And so by deeding it to a group, perhaps housing could be built on that land. By the end of 2019, the group decided, yes, we do need to continue to meet, and we should also formalize what we're doing and start to figure out how we can best coordinate efforts for housing across the county. So jumping into 2020, this is when the group was renamed SHAPE, and again, that's South Sound Housing Affordability Partners. During 2020, they did submit a letter to the Pierce County State Legislative Delegation talking about common areas of interest and priority related to affordable housing. They also had various government affairs staff or consultants working with the different jurisdictions come back and report to them as a group about what had happened with state legislative session bills. SHAPE developed informational pieces about itself. So when these mayors went back to speak to either their own councils or commissions or to others, they were able to explain in a quick elevator speech what exactly SHAPE was and what it was intended to do. I mentioned that Dr. Madaris's report was done in 2020, and it was titled Pierce County Affordable Housing Environment Report. And it included not only regional information, but also national best practices about providing housing affordable to area residents. And that was actually included as part of your packet tonight, the report itself, as well as all of its appendices. Another milestone that happened in this year was that Cedar River Group was hired as a consultant to continue to move this group forward and continue its process toward formalizing itself. And so what they've done so far this year is reach out and do stakeholder interviews to both elected and staff members, as well as industry experts out in our community regarding ongoing development of affordable housing and also how those processes could be improved or better coordinated. There was creation of some options that are going to be in front of you tonight and will be in front of the SHAPE group next week about how it's going to organize and fund itself. And then there was a 2021 legislative session letter drafted as well. And that is now, I believe, in final form and moving forward to the Pierce County State Delegation. Also for consideration by the SHAPE leadership group next week are a draft capital funding program, meaning this group would not only have policy priorities and actions, but they would actually potentially create a capital fund that would be used for regional housing projects. So something that might serve multiple jurisdictions' populations. There's an operating budget that's been drafted. There's a frequently asked questions sheet, again, for circulation to other individuals and groups outside of the SHAPE Leadership Board, and then potential staff organization for this organization itself. So I mentioned attachments. What you got in tonight's packet was the report from Dr. Medeiros. There was the currently used overview handout about SHAPE. There were the letters that have been drafted so far to the 2020 and 21 state delegations, and also there was a letter that was submitted to Congressman Denny Heck this year. There's the results of the public service surplus land inventory. There is the attachment that includes all of the documents first circulated 2 weeks ago, a little over 2 weeks ago, relating to what is going to be discussed in next week's meeting. And then there was finally the ordinance that Pierce County adopted, where Lakewood did in fact provide some support financially for the group's efforts here in 2020. So what's happening now is the group is trying to figure out where it goes next, who would be involved, how it would hire staff potentially, and how it would fund its work, creating an annual work plan, figuring out how to then turn around and report on an annual basis, at least to the member governments, and then figuring out if staff from member governments are working as the primary staff for this group, or if there are actually dedicated staff hired by SHAPE to move forward. So far, Mayor Anderson has been involved at both the mayoral roundtable meetings in 2019 and SHAPE this year. As I mentioned, there were those letters. Lakewood did sign both of the legislative letters, as well as the one to Denny Heck, and then provided $5,000 in support to SHAPE this year. I am serving as a member of the staff working group that provides recommendations to the Cedar River group. And then just for your information, these are the other jurisdictions that have been participating regularly. So you'll see again, Pierce County, and then Auburn, Edgewood, Fife, Fircrest, Gig Harbor, Ording, Puyallup, Steilacoom, Sumner, University Place, and the Puyallup Tribe are all there along with the founding members. What is SHAPE and why is it here, and why do people want to keep having it in place? This is a summary of what thoughts have come to mind so far by the group. Providing expertise and assistance to smaller jurisdictions in particular when it comes to updates to their planning and zoning and incentives that they may have. Providing housing experts for those jurisdictions, again, who may need that assistance and don't necessarily have the budget to hire anyone themselves. Policy support, and then getting into advocacy, both at the state and federal levels, figuring out how to attract investment into the area, as well as IDing their own capital fund that SHAPE would somehow manage going forward and help coordinate the construction of housing units. And then creating a coalition that goes beyond just the current work plan, but also a longer standing relationship about regional affordable housing. These are some draft focus areas that are being discussed right now for your information by the group. So first of all, COVID response and understanding that there is that much more of a stress and insecurity for many regarding their households now that COVID has been in place for this long, and all of the restrictions on working and restrictions on incomes are affecting people's ability to stay in their homes. Another focus area is policies and programs to accelerate access to affordable housing. And there's a number of options that can either be picking up things that other jurisdictions have already done, or maybe assisting governments with creating new ideas that could then become models for others. Looking at conjunction of high capacity transit and affordable housing in a near location to that. Working and enacting legislation and policies and other things that may come to mind as time goes by. A third one is to create that capital fund that I just mentioned. So the idea here is to ID other funds that exist, see if there's something there that could be used as a model, and or see if there's ways that those dollars could be better used going forward in a cooperative way. And then figuring out, if that's the case, where to start identifying locations for such capital improvements. We'll see if that would actually ever happen. Fourth one would be to make sure that you've got coordinated communication up to the state legislature by SHAPE members in order to make the message to the Pierce County delegation, and in turn to the whole legislature, that much more unified and powerful coming from the Pierce County area. A fifth one is to make sure that there is ongoing literacy, if you will, by elected officials for the need for affordable housing, the issues that are out there that are longstanding, as well as those that are maybe short-term. Hopefully COVID is a one-time thing here. But also looking to universities for information that can educate existing elected officials, as well as other groups in the community. Informing developers, whether they be nonprofit or for-profit, on the need for affordable, subsidized or not housing for our residents. And then making ongoing presentations to commissions or councils to help educate those groups as well. The idea of staff, and this is where some of the request for funding is coming from, is if this group were to be formalized into its own standalone group, there would be presumably some sort of executive manager that would run things either as a solo staff person or might oversee another half-time FTE at this point, as what's been discussed. And they would be, the executive manager would be the outward facing individual, would help coordinate meetings and communications among members, and work in turn also with legislative activities on behalf of the group. And then there's two options that have been talked about for the second person that might be hired as a SHAPE staff person. One would be an alternative related to legislative policy support. The other one would be working on the capital fund. So kind of two alternatives that have been floated to date. What's being asked for, and this is going to be discussed tomorrow in the staff level and then next week at the elected level for SHAPE, is some sort of expression of support for the group overall, and then also what type of financial support each jurisdiction may be able to provide. And I'll go over this in more detail, but long story short, there are 4 options that have been thrown out. They vary by the number of staff that would be hired, either 1 or 1.5. They vary by how many cities are supporting SHAPE. One is based on the current number of cities involved, and the other assumes an additional 4 cities are engaged and help. And then the third variable that they're talking about is how long of time the money for each year would be covering. So as you see in the text here, it's assumed a 6-month support amount for 2021 and then a full year in 2022. The range for Lakewood total for both years put together ranges between $17,000 and $25,000. So there are some assumptions within the background of these dollars estimations. And again, it's related to the number of people hired, the length of time that they are being paid for, the fact that there's X or Y number of cities involved, and then also how they are breaking it out. So is it strictly based on population of a city? And that's how much money they would be paying in relation to others, is how big they are. The other one was based kind of in tiers. So cities with a certain range of population would be paying the same amount, and then the next range would there'd be 3 or 4 jurisdictions paying the same amount. So here are Lakewood's options. And I know this is a lot of information. Forgive me for trying to throw this at you so fast, but in option 1, you have a population-based number of 63, 61, and then the city group, and again, that's where there's multiple ones being charged the same amount, of 8,000, and that's for half of a year and 1 FTE. The second year would be a full year, so you can see how it's roughly doubling what you saw in year 1, but there is some economy of scale. So in there, if you go strictly by population, it's a little over 13,000. If it's in that city group, it's 14 even. So the total in either one of those options would be between 19,500 and 22,000. Option 2 is also 1 FTE, but it includes the assumption that 4 more cities would be supportive of SHAPE. And so there you'll see, because there's more cities involved, the amount for Lakewood will go down. First year, it drops about $1,000. Second year, it drops a little bit for the population base, but in the city group one, it stays the same. And the total, again, there's a range there between almost 18,000 and 21,000. Options 3 and 4 both assume 1.5 FTEs. And then option 4 again is the one that says not only is it 1.5 FTEs, but there's going to be 4 more cities involved. And you'll see the range, and again, it starts lower because the first year is 6 months, the second year is 12 months. Between those two put together, you see between 25,000 and 28,000 within option 3 for the city of Lakewood. And then option 4, which is 1.5 FTEs and 4 more cities involved in helping to pay, those totals go down a little bit, so it's between 22,900 and 25,000. I'm not even going to go through these slides, but these are here and they're in your packet just to explain and show how Lakewood fits in with the other populations and tier calculations for the other jurisdictions currently there. There was a question raised, and we wanted to try to give you a little bit of background. Assuming the city of Lakewood wants to continue to support SHAPE, and assuming that the city council does want to put more some dollars toward it over the next 2 years, there are the consideration to be made: is it out of general fund or is it coming from some of the other funds that the city has access to? So CDBG dollars are for housing repair and maintenance, and they cannot be used for new residential construction. And those funds also can only be used for Lakewood residents. So really this fund is not available to be used to help support SHAPE. Home funds is something that is also for new housing construction within the city of Lakewood. Pierce County has CDBG and home fund dollars available to it that could be used anywhere in the county. And perhaps this is something where Lakewood could talk to the county about using some of those dollars as a way to help support SHAPE, but that conversation has not started at all. And it would require some changes in policy and procedure for use of those two funds. There's $2060 and $2163 coming to Lakewood right now, but it would require a change to the underlying interlocal agreement for those funds. And this would be a stable source of funds, but there would have to be some discussion about how those dollars use would change. And then there's the recently adopted $1406. The council took action on that earlier this year. That is under $100,000 a year right now, and right now they are being used in conjunction with the city's CDBG and home fund dollars. So all of those are there as a potential. Not all of them are available, but we wanted to make sure you saw those options. The other thing about SHAPE is that right now we have, in addition to this Pierce County and its cities conversation about regional housing, there are some changes that are coming down from the county-wide planning policy level. Puget Sound Regional Council just adopted Vision 2050. I think Deputy Mayor Whalen mentioned that at the last City Council meeting. It was done on October 29th. And that in itself has some new direction about regional housing planning. So if SHAPE continues to go forward, it just needs to make sure it's working in conjunction with what all of the cities and county will have to do to comply with Vision 2050's policies. And there, of course, is the potential here for some confusion, at least at the start, if SHAPE starts to move into this area where there's already a myriad of groups working on affordable housing as well as organizations. So getting back to the start, the question first is, does Lakewood want to continue to support SHAPE? It's been one of the participating members since last year. It's signed all of those letters and provided financial support this year already. And then if it does Lakewood want to do the financial support for SHAPE? And if so, there's not a specific answer as to an amount needed tonight, but I guess there would need to be direction to try to determine where funding might come from and how much would be available if the city wants to do this. So that's a lot of information. It's a lot of new stuff to throw at you all at once, but I'm happy to answer any questions, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much. So it is a question twofold, whether this is something we want to be a part of and move forward with, and then second, whether we want to pay to play and to what extent. So are there any questions by council members? Ms. Spear? Just kind of an update at this point. Do we need, Mr. Caulfield, to have an action item coming out of this session as to whether we want to direct you to find money in the budget in the next meeting or two? Is that what you're looking for?
Actually, Deputy Mayor, I don't think that's what we're looking for. I think what I would really appreciate would be some consensus from the council, whether or not you want to continue to be at the table. And again, Ms. Spears at the table, but really it's your Mayor Don Anderson who is spearheading this. And do you want him to continue to be there and pulling this together? And then secondly, do you believe that once something does come together, is it going to be worthwhile to contribute financially? Over a 1.5 year period, the amount of funding, even on the high end, that the group is looking at is, I think is part of the carry forward adjustment in the early part of 2021. I don't think is overwhelming. I think it's money that we can find. Again, if the council wants to move forward with this. And again, before, that commitment needs to occur, there needs to be the establishment of the organization, its governance, also who is going to be the keeper of this organization, because it's not going to have the capacity to be self-sufficient. And, maybe an example would be SSMCP, where either Tacoma or Pierce County takes on handling the finances, the risk management, the legal stuff, the drafting of the agreement, et cetera, et cetera. So I still think there's a lot of work that needs to be done here. But again, from a policy perspective, really 2 questions. Do you want to be part of this? And if so, are you willing to pay?
I thought the 2 questions actually were, so thank you. I'm going to open it up. Ms. Farmer and Mr. Branster have questions. I just had a quick question I was going to throw out there before they interject theirs as well. Burke and Associates did a huge study on this, which is much of the substantive information that SHAPE is using as part of their chewing on the issue. Has there been any thought of just hiring a consultant as opposed to creating another level of bureaucracy and hiring the staff person with benefits and a part-time FTE with more benefits? Any thought why they wouldn't just continue and hire Burke to kind of carry the flag forward for SHAPE?
That has not been part of the conversation I'm aware of to date, but it's something that I could ask tomorrow and maybe suggest that they consider.
I would, because they're the ones who put yeoman's work into analyzing the policies of Pierce County and in the region in general as to how it was impacting the development of affordable housing. So seems to me, one who doesn't like reinventing the wheel or paying for it, that might be a good question to ask. Ms. Farmer.
I agree with you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, and I also have a lot of other questions. So thank you, Ms. Spear, for the thorough nature and for all the appendices. There's a lot going on here. To the original questions, I definitely want to be at the table, but I have too many questions right now to figure out. Yeah, anyway, so my first question is, has there been any discussion given to the time period they are proposing? If you're going to stand something up, you're going to spend most of your time standing something up in a half a year to a year, and then you're turning around having to fight for money to continue the efforts because you've just gotten started. So I was really surprised at the short time frame.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I think they're at almost a chicken or the egg point in their existence right now. They're trying to figure out what to do next, because on the one hand, you have the ability to plan 5 and 10 year increments or 20-year increments even for organizations, but you have constant turnover of elected officials. And I think part of the reason we're looking at biennial budgeting and every 2-year planning potentially dollars wise is because you will have continuing change of elected leadership. But what that does is limit your ability to be stable and predictable over time and consistent in how you can hire staff or how you can use your dollars effectively. So where they sit is to say, do we even want to formalize it all? And then that's where these suggestions have come from, is Cedar River Group came up with some ideas that they're going to talk about next week. not to say that these couldn't significantly change based on the feedback they get next week. It could be people saying, you know what, all of this is good and well, but we need to either change the amount of money that might be assessed, change the amount of time we're planning for, change how we use staff. I mean, it's really still all up in the air.
Fair enough. Was there any thought so far given to a path forward to collaboration? I note that Dr. Morales talked about it in his paper about the very real need to have this be a collaboration between profits, nonprofits, and governments. And what I see is the proposal of a government-focused structure, which makes sense. You start with what you have. But I was curious if they've given themselves a path forward or have discussed connections there.
They have not discussed incorporating non-governmental entities into their leadership structure at this point. They certainly leaned on for-profit and nonprofit development experts while they were having their initial informational meetings for the elected officials. But in terms of figuring out what they're going to look like as an entity, right now it's strictly elected officials from local government.
Okay, thank you. And I note in several places in the memo and in some of the conversations we've had over the past time period, I worry about duplicating efforts. There are so many organizations, so many governments that care about this at various levels. Again, I guess the question would be path forward. How in the world do we ensure that we're not going to duplicate efforts and that we're all going to be working together? I don't know if they've answered that.
Nobody has answered that. That's been my mantra throughout this process. My professional career prior to working with city was Master Builders Association and government affairs for residential construction in this area. So this has been something I've worked on for 20 plus years. And coming from the for-profit side, but also working with nonprofits as we did that, there were several housing consortium efforts and task forces that I worked on where it was, what's already happening? We all have this new and invigorated energy to try to move forward, but let's make sure we're not duplicating. And so what I have tried to do in this role that I'm playing now is just make sure that that's part of their focus areas. And you see that I think it's number 4 or 5, where they do look at existing groups and existing available ways to achieve affordable housing in a jurisdiction, and just making sure that that's the starting point. Because part of what's going on, again, is because you have elected officials leading this, some of them have been around for a long time, but some are relatively new to their spot. And as we move forward, that will continue to be the case. And there just may be people in leadership who aren't aware of all of the various groups already in place and the efforts that are already ongoing. And so in one way, this group could have great value simply by being a place for the electeds to learn about this stuff in a relatively quick way, to be able to have this drinking from the fire hose almost opportunity to hear about affordable housing and how it's being handled through these other groups. And then they can figure out, okay, now that I understand that better, where do I see myself working either for my own jurisdiction or for the region?
Thank you. I only have 2 more questions. Okay, the next one is, there was a large focus on new construction. New. I know that something that Lakewood faces is that we don't have a lot of open space. We don't have a lot of places where new construction could go, but we do have a lot of houses that could use some rehabbing. And so that's typically what we use some of our CDBG monies for. Has there been any conversation about, the goal is housing units? Is it literally only new construction, or?
Yeah. There's 2 things to answer in that question. First of all, in part because Lakewood was an unincorporated area until 1996, but was pretty much built out by the time it did become a city, you have some older housing stock that maybe some of the smaller jurisdictions that are now starting to expand simply don't have in their stock. And so they're saying, we've got so many people here, but we know this many more are coming and we flat out have no houses, so we need to build more of them, or we need more apartments, whatever. Whereas in Lakewood, it's a little more of the how can we relocate population into different types of units without having to necessarily build new ones to a certain extent. Meaning, if you're an empty nester, you may not want that single family house anymore. You may want an apartment now. Somebody in an apartment who's having kids maybe wants to go into a house. So there's a little more of the musical chairs going on in our jurisdiction. The other thing is Lakewood is a regional leader, and I think you've heard this from Mr. Buer in the past, with its rental housing safety program and the focus on preserving existing housing stock. That's really not something that the other jurisdictions in our area have spent a lot of time on yet. And so Lakewood is actually seen as a model for how that can be done. And the Municipal Research Center and Puget Sound Regional Council have both pointed to Lakewood's model as something others should follow. So that may come up and out of this group as well. SHAPE may be coming to Lakewood at some point asking about existing stock preservation.
Okay. And last question, the proposed slides that dealt with the various types of funding scenarios based on how many cities participated and various variables, that I'm not sure I'm going to explain this correctly, so I might have to try again. But those options are to fund the 1 or the 1.5 FTEs. They're not necessarily to fund affordable housing. So if Lakewood were to put in a certain amount of money, we wouldn't necessarily get a certain amount of services. Those right now we're just looking at possibly funding the infrastructure of managing this effort.
Correct. Yes. What we're talking about is an amount of money that the city would be donating toward the establishment of a staff and presumably, I don't know if it would be a 501c3 or some other type of organization. The dollars that we're talking about wouldn't go toward any sort of capital fund, wouldn't go toward supporting any particular housing project that's being built right now. All of that would come later, assuming once SHAPE was in place as a formal organization and there was a decision to do a capital funding effort, and that by doing so, there wouldn't be a disruption to the current capital projects that are out there funded by various and sundry groups, be they government or non-government organizations. So yeah, it's really step one. It's really getting the people in place, and then from there you get a work plan in place and an action plan to implement it, and off you go.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Mike, are you on mute?
I'm done. That's it for me. Thank you.
Mike, Mr. Branstetter?
Thanks, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Ms. Spear, and certainly it's both a comprehensive evaluation of what we're being asked, and I appreciated that it's a candid one. I guess that what I would say is that I'm wondering why there is not a fifth option of the mayors continuing to meet in their current format to work at sharing and talking about regional concerns around housing, but continuing to allow jurisdictions and other groups to actually work how they provided advice. Is the option that if we don't do one of these four, this group of mayors is going to stop meeting?
I don't think so. I think we are at the point of deciding if it's going to be a staffed formal organization separate and apart from any particular local government and apart from, for instance, the Pierce County Regional Council, Pierce County Cities and Towns, the PSRC hierarchy, or any other group, or if it's going to be something else. And to date, the conversation by those involved has been, we need to keep going and we need to formalize ourselves because this work is very important and we need to figure out how to best immerse ourselves in it. And so this is where we sit today, is the question is now going out to all of the jurisdictions. What do you think of this? And what kind of dollars might you be able to find to support it?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Caulfield, to your question about what kind of a consensus is available this evening or in the near future, I guess that I'm not ready to lend my voice to a consensus to move forward with any of these 4 proposals. I am in favor of continuing to, with the amount that we've been supporting our mayor or whomever he designates, to continue to meet with this group to have discussions, because I do think it is a topic that needs regional discussion. It's eventually going to need regional action, but I don't think forming a formal group is going to be an effective preemptive action to prevent the Puget Sound Regional Council, who has stuck their nose into this tent, and eventual action by the Pierce County Regional Council to move forward, along with the other groups that are actively engaged with housing to go forward. So I think that at least not until I hear something that is more convincing from Mayor Anderson about the potential as to why there should be a formal group as opposed to just leaders meeting, forming ideas, and then informing groups that already exist or that are going to mobilize themselves to act. So that would kind of be where I would be at this junction.
Thank you, Mr. Boki.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Just a couple items. I agree with Councilmember Farmer's remarks about, and I just, Councilmember Branstad just touched on it, about duplicating efforts. There's, I understand the urgency of the situation. I understand, the state legislature, every time they meet, they're kind of a little bit more panicky about it. And they create another tax, and they create another way to get into the housing market. But I'm a little bit confused as to where this group is fitting in. And when they start talking about raising capital, that sounds to me like, well, then are they a housing agency? Is that their goal? And well, we already have housing agencies. So I'm confused by that, where they're going. I'm also, when in the volume of information that we're given, I became really concerned about we're at the table, and that's a good thing, because if you're at, the old adage, if you're not at the table, you're on it. And but when you look at those questionnaires and where we are and where Tacoma's at, and I guess to a lesser extent Puyallup, compared to some of these other cities that aren't even in the game. I mean, I'll give Gig Harbor credit. They were honest, right? They basically said, we don't have anything. And, it might be a good idea for us to look at sometime in the future that we might take a look at these policies. And I'm like, the answer is you're not doing anything. And so it always comes down to Tacoma and Lakewood are going to take on this responsibility. And the East Side cities that are the rapidly growing cities, they were not too good. So I'm not sure where this whole thing's going. And I wish the mayor was here tonight to kind of give us some idea of where he thinks the game is going. So I'm with Councilmember Branstad. I'm just really not willing to commit dollars to something that then becomes a government agency that then isn't going to stop, right? Because then it's, once we're in, and we're in for $10,000 or $7,000, it's not stopping. The question is what's I guess I don't understand what the end game is. I'm confused as to where they fit in. I get that they're bringing all these people to the table, but just today, one of the committees of the county council, the rules committee, was approving increases in school impact fees and parks impact fees, which we don't even have here in Lakewood. But most of the county now does. And so, we're light on the impact fees. We don't really do them. And so, we're in the game, and these other people are spectators. Now we're all going to be at the table. Are they going to come into the game, or are they just going to remain spectators? And I guess I just don't know where this committee's going and what their end game is. So I'm with the other individuals who have spoken as to a little bit skeptical as to, are they reinventing the wheel? Are they just so frustrated? This group of people is just so frustrated with the lack of action or success by other groups involved, including some of the housing agencies, including the county itself that has the 2060 and the 2163 money. And they're just trying to figure out a new way to go around it. I don't understand. So maybe we just need to have the mayor talk to us at another study session.
Simpson?
So, Mr. Deputy Mayor, what I'm hearing from the group this evening, oh, I'm sorry.
Yep, Mr. Simpson's up. Sorry about that.
That's quite all right, Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the comments that have been made up to this point. I think we should remain at the table. But as I listened to the presentation tonight and its lack of certainty, I was reminded that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I'm not sure that I want the city starting down that particular road, not until it is demonstrated that this effort is not duplicative. Because if it is, then I don't think we should go there. If it isn't, and that's where, as Councilmember Boki mentioned, and I believe Councilmember Brandstatter and Farmer mentioned, if there's something the mayor here can enlighten us on, then I would be, that's one thing. But until there is that enlightenment, so to speak, I am very skeptical, very wary of Lakewood paying anything at this point. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
My thoughts in here. I had the occasion during the last 4 or 5 months of activity to kind of be involved in a lot of forums involving housing. And it seems to me that there's obviously a lot of interest. There's a sense that solutions should be regional in nature, or at least thought through from a regional perspective to avoid duplication. And there are a lot of well-meaning folks, including the municipalities listed, that want to be at the table. I mean, League of Women Voters, for instance, they're anxious about housing. They really want to see something happen with housing. MDC, there's all sorts of organizations. So it seems to me that in an effort to avoid duplication, there may be some value in having this organization, or at least some sort of consortium, loosely organized. SSMCP is not loosely organized. It's very well tuned at this point, but it started off as kind of a consortium of folks. But I think that rather than hiring staff, they should think about hiring the consultant to further the work and to come back to the consortium with regard to some recommendations, as opposed to creating more bureaucracy. An end result and a recommendation down the road might be to establish some sort of framework that's funded by the member jurisdictions, but I don't think they're there yet. I think they're trying to fund the solution before they quite know what the problem is. So that would be my thoughts, and I think that's consistent with what I'm hearing. I think we want to be at the table. We just don't know what the precise structure should be. And we're not certain that we should be funding it until we know what the structure should be. Is that fair to say? Everybody? And we might want to wait, John, until the mayor comes back if he has further thoughts on it, because he's been at the meetings. I haven't been. I wish I would have more specifics to impart with all of you, but all I can tell you is that there is an interest to have some sort of regional think about it, to determine some sort of best practices so that there isn't undue overlap between the jurisdictions, because there may be some areas in the county that are better suited for new housing as opposed to a place like Lakewood, where we can try to do a better job with infill. We've already got the ADU ordinance that we're desperately trying to kind of get off the table. Well, not off the table, but in practice. We have the cottage housing ordinance, which I think is fabulous. We have yet to have one project in the city of Lakewood. So we've got some tools in place ourselves. We just, we just need to kind of push that envelope forward and we're different than Buckley may be, or that Bonnie Lake might be, or the county might be. So maybe the message is tomorrow, we're fine being at the table. We just don't know what the table is yet. And we don't necessarily want to reset it with new China.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. Let me see where we are. Next, we have a discussion. Again, Tiffany, you're woman of the hour, or the woman of the 3 hours tonight. You're going to lead us through a coronavirus relief fund grant funding status update.
Thank you once more, Mr. Deputy Mayor. This will be much faster, I promise. So as we've been doing all month, this is information for you this evening regarding the status of the Coronavirus Relief Fund grant distribution. And so I will just once more share my screen to get this in front of you. As of November 18th, so last Wednesday, all of the funds were allocated to either small businesses, commercial landlords, public partners, or child care providers. 100% of those dollars had been dispersed. The only one that was still outstanding was the share of money going to LASA for their rental assistance program that they were doing. And it was basically acting as a pass-through for the dollars coming from Lakewood, and they were distributing it to landlords once they heard from renters saying that they needed that help. So in total, that ended up being 72 small businesses, 17 commercial landlords, 12 human services partners, and as of the 2nd of November, that's the latest information I could gather, 258 renters had been assisted through LASA and other service partners, 23 child care providers, and 5 public partners, such as West Pierce Fire and Rescue, Nourish Pierce County, the Tacoma Public Library, and such. So where we sit as of right now is the chart right there with the dollars. There are about $476,000 left for dispersal. The lion's share of that is intended to be going to LASA. We are up against the deadline for use of the money, which is a week from today. So what we are going to be able to do is reimburse LASA through November 25th, and then we have the holiday. And then come November 30th, we will be able to know, based on how much LASA has used, what dollars may be remaining out of the total grant for city use. I did receive one inquiry today about whether there were any dollars left, and if that business is able to get all of their paperwork in tomorrow, we will be able to help them as well. But otherwise, there's a potential for about $40,000 additional dollars to come to the city based on what has happened to date. The dollars in some instances for those who did receive funds, they were allowed, for instance, a $10,000 business grant, but they ended up needing only 7,500 of it. Something like that left kind of these odds and ends, and that's where that final number here, this 42,000, is coming from. But right now, that number, as well as what's going to be left over from LASA, is what's subject to change between now and next Monday. In your full council packet, there was also a chart that showed you a list of all of the recipients that we had. So that's just there for your information. But otherwise, this program is pretty much coming to an end. And next Monday, we'll be able to figure out exactly how many of those dollars might still be available for city use. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Any questions of Ms. Spear, folks?
Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Deputy Mayor, just a quick comment. Thank you for including the sheet of the recipients beginning on page 225 of the packet. For me, it wasn't something necessary for me to see, but when I actually saw the names of the recipients, and some of them are people I know or businesses that I've used in the past, and it was really came through as being very meaningful to me. And so I really do appreciate that, because we knew some of the other ones, but like a lot of the businesses and the daycare places, I thank you for including that in there so that we could see that, because it really added a nice touch to what we were doing.
You're welcome.
President?
Yeah, I say, Ms. Spear, I think you and the rest of the staff are to be congratulated for all the effort that it took to both put this together and the coaching of people in the community to be able to help to get access to this. And I echo Mr. Boki's appreciation for getting the list to where we can see who that is. That how long is the dashboard going to be up on the city's website so that others can look at it, and how updated is it, or when do you envision it being finally updated so that can refer others in the community to look there?
First of all, in terms of it being up to date, I think by next Tuesday or Wednesday, so December 1 or 2, it'll have all of the final information, because again, we'll have information from LAHSA as to final allocation there. As far as how long it will stay on the website, I'm assuming it will be there into next year, particularly because there's the potential for additional funds to come from the federal or state level. So there may be another round. We have no idea yet, but that is a possibility. And so why not keep it up there until we know that for sure?
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
It leads me to a question. This is really good information, and I don't know how we best get this out to the community, but that Connections magazine or whatever we had going out had some information about COVID. I don't know if it has the detail to this extent in there, but it might be something that the public really would enjoy seeing. I would also encourage us to get a copy of this through Becky over to Linda Smith at the Chamber, so that the Chamber can fully understand what we're doing for local and small businesses in our community, and maybe some sort of a publication in Suburban Times or elsewhere, just to show the community that we're using these funds well, I think, because the other question I would ask of you, were there very many businesses, if any, that didn't get funding that requested it?
There was probably 5 or 6 that initially applied and were approved, but then they never took it any further. So they didn't submit the receipts or anything we needed to reimburse. And whether that was they figured something out, or it was they maybe closed their doors altogether,
Right.
We couldn't tell you. We tried repeatedly to reach out to them, and it just never worked.
But certainly not on us and not from our
Correct.
desire to provide help. Okay.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, I think that the more we can communicate this, the better, so the community knows that we're in this with them and we're putting our money where our mouth is.
And just a reminder to the council too, this is just the Coronavirus Relief Fund grant. There's also the ongoing CDBG grant, which is a different program, and that is still ongoing. That is, I think, has another 6 months actually for people to be applying and receiving funds. So you'll be getting those reports from Becky Newton, I'm assuming.
Very good. That Connections magazine's already out in final print or to be published, right?
I think the next issue would be in winter, and it's probably about time to get some articles in, if not too late. But we can certainly do press releases and such.
Yeah, well, whatever we can do to get this out there, I think that would be helpful.
Sure.
Anybody else agree with that? You think that's a good idea? Okay. Very good. Is that it, Tiffany, on that?
That is it, sir.
We don't have another 3 or 4 topics for us?
No, I'm done.
Okay, just checking, just making sure. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So on our agenda, everyone sees the items tentatively scheduled for the next council meeting on December 7. including a proclamation expressing appreciation to Denny Heck for his accomplishments and help here in the city. A proclamation recognizing the South Sound 9/11 first responders for their extraordinary work during Graham and Sumner fire events. We've got the Lakewood City Council virtual tree lighting and holiday message. And I think many of you already have been contacted by Brianna and other members of staff to make sure you get your video message done. So the sooner you can get that done, the better. I did mine on Friday. So you can do our collective holiday message virtually. We got the Youth Council report, Clover Park School District report, and certain bids that will be awarded. So other than that, reports by the city manager, Mr. Caulfield.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, and good evening, Council. Got a few updates for you. If you recall, I previously reported we're having some issues, some challenges with the U.S. Army Contracting Command regarding our cooperative agreement regarding the North Clear Zone. And as I had previously reported, JBLM was going to reach out to their leadership, specifically Army Environmental Command. And they actually met this morning, JBLM leadership, so the Garrison Commander and Chief of Staff, with the commander of that unit, who is also a full bird colonel. And long story short, she understands the situation and she wants to work with us to get to yes on this. So hopefully more to follow in the next week or two, and certainly we'll keep you appraised of the movement here.
Just a quick one on that one. So are we in any sort of danger of being in breach of our purchase and sale agreement with Tactical Taylor if we can't come up with that extra $1 million?
Well, first of all, Deputy Mayor, we currently don't have a purchase and sale agreement with Tactical Taylor. We have a draft one ready to go, and all we got to do is fill in the blanks once we get the cooperative agreement in place with the U.S. Army command element there. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
I think as you're aware, and we talked about this last week, the city initiated a temporary outdoor seating option for restaurants and even other businesses this past summer. We had a couple of takers. We had a handful or so businesses interested, but nobody really pulled the proverbial trigger on that. So last week we put out some additional information and even reached out to some of our larger REITs, particularly here in the town center, if they wanted to get together a number of restaurants and create that. So we'll see what happens. I know it's getting a little colder and wetter, but in any event, we're here to help, and folks want to take advantage of it. It's certainly something that we can not only accommodate, but also facilitate as well. Last week, I had reported that the city had been awarded a $2.3 million safety program grant in support of Silicon Boulevard between 83rd and 87th. I'm pleased this evening to report that the Transportation Improvement Board has awarded the city a $3 million grant in support of the JBLM North Access Project, specifically the Phase 1 component of Gravelly Lake Drive between Nyanza Pacific Highway South and Washington Boulevard, which is a key component of our funding. So I want to extend our congratulations there to our Public Works Engineering Department. In addition, they're not done. We did learn about a federal grant that is available for entities that are adjacent or next to federal lands, including military installations. And it's called the Federal Lands Access Program. And, the military has to have an acronym for everything. So it's called FLAP. And so we're in the process of finalizing a $5 million ask, again, in support of the JBLM North Access Project, though this would be for Phase 2, coming out of Northgate to Edgewood onto Washington Boulevard. We also needed to get a letter of endorsement from the JBLM base commander, and we were able to secure that actually earlier this morning. So we are off to the races to submit this. This is a program that totals about $250 to $270 million annually nationwide throughout all of the states. And the state of Washington has allocated $11.5 million. So we're asking for, close to half of it. We estimate a 30 to 35% chance of getting the funding. It is somewhat of a competitive program. But again, the worst thing that they can say is no. And then, we can learn and come back at a later date if for some reason we don't receive the funding. But we are cautiously optimistic that we do have a competitive grant coupled with the great support from JBLM. Also, the Office of Economic Adjustment notified us today that we have, or rather SSMCP, South Sound Military and South Sound Military and Community Partnership, has secured the $715,000 grant that will allow us to develop an updated growth coordinating plan as it relates to JBLM, and that work will get underway in the early part of 2021 and is expected to be about a 15-month process. The RFP was put out on the street on Friday, November 13th. On Friday morning, unfortunately, we received a letter from the Nisqually tribe, and actually it was both the city of Lakewood and the city of Lacey, letting us know that they were providing us notice terminating our jail services contract. We actually haven't had a contract with them for a couple of years. We've actually been in negotiations with them to try and get an extension. So we've been going month to month. The reason that they are terminating the contract is they really want to focus on tribal justice, as well as maybe a small contract with the Washington State Department of Corrections. There are a couple of smaller other entities that also have municipal contracts with them for jail services. However, their contracts have not yet expired. So in conversations with a couple of those entities, it's probably anticipated that once their timeline is up, they too will not have access to that jail. And it is for misdemeanant purposes. That's not to say that we don't have options. We do have a contract with Pierce County for use of the Pierce County Jail, which we use somewhat regularly. The challenge is twofold. One is it's very, very expensive. It's 3 times the cost. The booking cost is 3 times the cost, and the daily fee is about 30% greater than the Nisqually. In addition, they do not have video arraignment for outside sources. So there's 2 things that we're looking at. One is a little easier than the other. Let me start with that one. That is, once an individual's case is adjudicated and they're sentenced, where do they go? Sending them down to the Nisqually to do up to 364 days was very, very convenient and very, very cost effective. However, there are other options that we have used in the past. For example, over in Wapato in Eastern Washington, or Yakima County, or Prosser. There are quite a few entities over there that do business with cities such as Lakewood. So we're in the process of reaching out to them to again identify an alternative. But really the big challenge is just the day-to-day bookings that we have. And again, right now we have Pierce County Jail. However, Pierce County Jail, generally speaking, is not taking misdemeanant bookings unless it's a significant domestic violence, of course, or of course, a significant felony like a homicide or something along those lines. And actually the Nisqually Jail was the only jail in this region that was actually taking misdemeanants. So there's going to be a lot of catch and release out here in our community as it relates to that. But again, we're going to be looking at some options and alternatives to see what else is out there to address that. But be rest assured that we do have a place to take people, and that is the Pierce County Jail. Want to report, Todd Krause, our Assistant City Manager for Administrative Services, that reports that our 2019 annual state audit is complete and no issues in any shape, form, or manner. It's an outstanding job by her and her team, but is also a very positive reflection of the organization of a whole, and obviously starts with the mayor and the council. So I just wish to extend my congratulations to you. On the state legislative side, 3 updates. Our government relations team met with the governor's policy advisor on behavioral health last week. The issue and the concern that we have is there going to be a cut to the budget that could, state's budget, particularly in DSHS, that could have an impact on what the Washington State Hospitals Community Partnership Program, which is about $621,000 over a biennium. And what we were told is rest assured that highly unlikely, or actually that it's not going to happen. It's not going to be cut. So we were very pleased to learn that. So I'm passing that on to you. At the same time, we are going to follow up with a formal letter to the governor, just reiterating, our support for their program that they would like to have at Western State Hospital, and to encourage him to make sure that that's included in his budget proposal, which is expected to be released in the second or third week of December. I also had a follow-up conversation with the executive director of LAHSA early last week. And, I explained to her, I was right up front. I says, what's your plan for the funds that we're seeking from the state, as well as, what the city is bringing to the table? And I know she has some ideas. Long story short, I emphasized to her that you folks were going to be meeting with our state representatives and senators on December 2nd. And there is a bit of an urgency here. I also offered, if LAHSA needs time to develop a plan, that's fine. We can do that in 2021 and then come back with the hard ask in 2022. At this point in time, the executive director, she's committed to working to secure the funds now. And so what she communicated to me was that she was going to call an emergency board meeting to talk about this, and that she would get back with me shortly on that. So more to follow on that. Also wanted to let you know that we have confirmed a legislative briefing with you and your state delegation, and we have 4 of the 6 who have RSVP'd, Representatives Kirby and Levitt, Representative-elect Bernowski and Senator Conway will all be there. Representative Morgan is unsure she can make it, and the same with Senator-elect Nobles. However, we will be reaching out to both of those afterwards if for some reason they cannot attend. On your next Monday, a week from Monday, there's 3 bid items on there for 2021 transportation projects. And 2 of them, we had the bid opening last week, and both of them came under our engineers and budget estimate. And so that we have a low bid. And so now we're working through the process to make sure that the contractor is not just the low bidder, but also the most responsible bidder. And right now things are looking good. And so we expect to have those 2 ready for your consideration as part of your December 7th meeting, which is the Lakewood Drive sidewalks between Steilacoom Boulevard and Fleck Creek, as well as the 111th and 112th Street improvements. The traffic signal project at Lakewood Drive and 100th, that bid opening is occurring later this week. And we also expect to have that in front of you for review and consideration. If not, then it will occur at the first meeting in January. Also, Mary Dodsworth, our Parks and Recreation Director, reports that she has finalized. I know I signed a bunch of paperwork securing additional property in support of Ward's Lake. And that was funded in part with Pierce County conservation dollars. And so there's additional property that we are going to be securing. So we're not done over there. And so work is well underway on appraisals and things along those lines. And we hope to have that wrapped up here in the next few months or so. Also a huge win on the safety side. The city is part of what's called the AWC Retro program, which we work in partnership with L&I Consortium of Cities. And you might remember last year we received a refund check for the first time ever, and that related to 2016 activities totaling almost $52,000. Well, this year we're going to receive, and this is for 2017 activity, we are going to receive a refund check of over $77,000. And what that is that's a reflection of going back to 2013, 14, and 15, focusing on employee safety, because quite frankly, we were lacking a little bit. So we have gone from not receiving any kind of a refund or recognition to now being a leader in the state in terms of employee safety and being recognized for it, not just being recognized for it, but also getting a refund from L&I. No small task there. And I want to really recognize our HR analyst, Kat St. Pierre, who has been spearheading this for a number of years. AWC leadership, just like last year, would like to come to one of your meetings in January or February to, well, be virtual, to officially present and congratulate, the organization for this. So look for that on a future agenda.
John, where does that money go? Does it go back to do we have like a self-insurance fund, or does it go back to the, how do you account for those dollars?
Councilmember Boki, it goes back to the respective funds that the employees were charged out of. And so most of it will go to the general fund, but the street fund, the CIP funds, wherever staff are allocated, and it'll be allocated proportionally.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Western State Hospital, would you like an update on Western State Hospital and their facility master plan? Can I get a yes? All right. All right. Thank you, Councilmember Farmer. So I think, as you're aware, Western State Hospital had proposed to submit their formal master plan application back in September and October. And not to be a broken record, but this has been going on for almost 20 years now. That's a fair and accurate statement. So we thought we were almost there. So the latest is this: they're going to hold off until the early part of 2021 once the governor releases his budget proposal. And the reason is this: there seems to be all kinds of internal issues regarding the True Blood lawsuit at the state level. It has nothing to do with the city of Lakewood. And a lot of uncertainty in terms of what the state legislature is looking for, the governor's office, OFM, the state attorney general's office. And so DSHS, for example, has a master site plan, which we actually think is a good one. However, they have two other alternatives that have kind of come out of left field, and that's fine, but they need one master site plan. And because that's what we have to take to the hearing examiner. And to take three master site plans just doesn't make any sense in any shape, form, or manner. So we told them that once they have an agreement at the state level in terms of what they do, we'd be more than happy to, help facilitate that. So hopefully we'll know more in the early part of 2021. If not, once the governor releases his budget proposal in the middle part of December. I think some of you might remember in 2018, the city of Lakewood was asked to participate in the International City County Managers Association City Manager Senior Fellowship Program, which is an opportunity for city managers to essentially meet and have a relationship with base commanders and base deputy commanders. And we sponsored a base commander, a garrison deputy commander from all the way in Germany. And they had a fellowship group. I think there was 20 of them, but the program in 2021, there's 6 that have been identified. In the city of Lakewood, I was contacted last week to see if we would be willing to participate, and I said yes. And so if one of those 6 selects Lakewood and JBLM, then we will be doing that again in 2021. Hopefully COVID-19 will be far in the rearview mirror by the time we get around to doing it. Has to be done before September or so. And what it is I actually will travel back to Washington, D.C., or actually the Pentagon, for a one-day orientation, myself and my colleagues from the 6 sponsoring agencies. And then we spend a day again, about a day and a half at the Pentagon. And then we schedule about a 1-week orientation where the fellow comes and spends time with the city and basically follows me around, as well as a number of our key leaders here in the city, and then also has an opportunity to meet with some of you folks in terms of how we operate a city, and kind of gives them an up close front view of how cities operate, which in the end is very, very similar to how bases or garrisons operate. The fallen officer and food drive was very, very successful. They're still counting up the pounds of food that have been donated that are going to go to EFN, great partnership with the Emergency Food Network. However, they have so far also collected donations totaling almost $11,000, which really exceeded expectations, as well as what has been collected in the past. So I really want to thank the community for coming out last week and helping out with that. And just a great program. And so that's my report. And I just want to end with just wishing you and your families a very happy Thanksgiving. And I'll turn it back to you, Deputy Mayor.
Very much. Any questions of the city manager?
Oh, go ahead with Mary.
Ms. Moss?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. Mr. Coffin, when you were talking about the jail, what came to my mind was the new jail that was built in Puyallup. Did that one open up? They were in the process of opening. Were they successful with that?
I think Councilmember Moss, that Puyallup's looking at building a bigger jail. I think they did have some expansion, but it's still relatively small. At one time, we did have a contract with them. I think there were about 35 or 40 beds. And we are reaching out to them, by the way. However, Buckley, in the last few years, closed their jail. And we believe that Buckley and a couple of other cities have really utilized most of the space down there. So we don't know how much, maybe it could be an option for, sentencing, after, maybe not for bookings, but for, the adjudication process. Puyallup could be used, but probably not daily bookings.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted to say good news on the audit. That sounds good, but I'm not surprised. I can understand the budget, so I'm sure that was a good one.
Thank you.
Mr. Brandstetter. Thank you, Mary.
And Mr. Caulfield, with respect to the conversations with LASA, I certainly was supportive of including the ask for funding for a LASA expansion as a legislative priority for us. That was sort of done with expectation that they were looking to expand what they were already doing by adding more units to what they are going. I was usually kind of glad that they were helping the city, because when that first came about, they went without notifying the city, went directly to the state legislator and asked for some money, and then caught the city of Lakewood and the Tacoma Housing Authority kind of in the state already gave a part of the money, and we agreed that we would move forward and support them in what became a very expensive per unit project. But I'm concerned that if they decide that they want to go in some brand new direction and put something that may or may not be compatible with the existing neighborhood just because it's what they want to do, I'm not certain that would remain, until I hear that, totally supportive, because I would say that $500,000 ask that we're making was based pretty much on the premise that they were going to replicate and expand what they're doing now. So as you have conversations with them to do that, I'm not really sure. Secondly, with Western State Hospital, is there some appropriate way when we meet with legislators to communicate that significant legislative meddling in what the master plan ought to look like may not be productive or what we would like them to support, given that we sort of like the look of the DSHS formulated master plan, and we wouldn't want one created in Seattle or by legislators from elsewhere to take effect. If we could think about how we might communicate that next week when we meet with legislators. That's all I have, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Mr. Bookey.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. A couple of questions. First of all, the grant, the TIB grant, congratulations. Does that mean this will go to next year?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so
good.
our side, we'll have to raise our side of the funding.
That's correct, which will be primarily in the stormwater area.
Okay, because it's a $3 million grant on a 7,550 project,
It's
so.
all it's all included in the budget. This was the missing piece, and we felt really good about this. You know, we've been, you know, our team had been meeting with TIB staff, you know, going back to the summer on this. And, you know, this meets all of their criteria in terms of the connection with Pacific Highway and the other part of Gravely Lake, and then just the future plans, Veterans Drive. It was kind of a no-brainer, quite frankly, for TIB.
And the roundabout at Interlochen.
That's correct. There's two round, one at Interlochen and then one at Gravely Lake and Washington Boulevard. Yeah, that's correct.
So John, what about these new master plan suggestions at Western State? How different are they?
I don't have that at my fingertips, Councilmember
Oh,
Boak. All I know is they submitted one, you know, and actually I really want to commend their capital projects manager or assistant director at DSHS. You know, he thought that they were there and ready to go. And then he heard from his hire and others, again, that I mentioned, that they're not. And as far as what those other two master plans are, I mean, they didn't submit it to us. They just kind of verbally communicated, here's what we're thinking. We're going to put together, you know, a second master plan and a third master plan. And Mr. Buer was like, no, we need one.
So, and I would my last comment would be, if they want to add additional things, remember the underlying property was given to them by the federal government to be at that, what they called at that time, an insane asylum. So
actually, that's correct.
Expanding the role of what they do there is in violation of what the federal government gave them that, unless they go get it changed.
Yeah, you know, in the end, Councilmember Boki, you know, our understanding of what they have communicated is really transitioning Western State Hospital over time to primarily a forensics type facility, which will mean less beds. They'll still probably have some kind of a civil commitment facility down there, but nowhere near the number of beds that they have right now. And that will probably take a couple of decades to get there. But that's kind of it, you know, but then they're going to be looking at, you know, they be in the state, the legislature and the governor looking at dispersing those civil commitments throughout the state, for example, through ESFs or other type of civil commitment facilities that are 8-bed and 16-bed units. And the reason for the 16 beds is because that doesn't need a certificate through the Department of Health.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Mr. Caulfield? If not, we'll go to council comments. I'm going to start with Mr. Simpson.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I appreciate that. I don't have anything to add other than to wish each and every one of you a very good Thanksgiving. And just as importantly, I think I'd like to extend that to every citizen in the city of Lakewood, because I am very well aware of the fact that there are some in our city who are not going to have the kind of Thanksgiving that we are. So I guess in a roundabout and uncharacteristic way for me, I'd ask that we keep them in our thoughts as well. And the other question I have is for the city manager, and that is, which one in your household is the turkey out here, Caulfield?
Very nice. Ms. Farmer.
So it's my turn to rave about Onyx. And I was thinking that Councilmember Boki and I should start some sort of a contest as to who has the best side of Onyx. Because I'm thinking, Miss Mary, our side is the best. And the new way that they configured that really silly intersection where, you know, if you put your blinker on and you're gonna go a slight left and everybody else thinks you're taking a slight right and everybody else thinks you're taking a hard right, and you know, there are so many near misses. And so it's just awesome that they've fixed that crazy intersection, and every day it just keeps looking better and better. And so we'll have to maybe wager or do something, but I think we've got an awesome side.
Will you
That's
be
it for
moved
me.
to tears? Will you be moved to tears, Linda? Like Paul said he was almost moved to tears? Because I can get a violin or two.
I had already spoken by that point, but I really have been very emotional about it. And the mayor mentioned it the other night. He's like, you poor folks in Oak Brook, you've been waiting so long. I mean, Oak Brook is obviously a very nice part of town, but these road projects are really, they're going to change. They've already changed the character and the nature of the neighborhood, and it's only going to grow property values and to build it up for the future and for years to come. So it's an amazing opportunity. It's just a street, but it's like, wow, it's the neighborhood. Yeah, I might cry.
I'd be moved to tears too when Mr. Caulfield plans a small little piece of concrete curbing in our neighborhood someday. So that'll be when I get moved to tears.
Oh, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brandstetter.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I'm really sorry to hear that we've made housing in Oak Brook less affordable. Somehow or another, that didn't seem to be the plan. But just, Deputy Mayor, since you've already done your holiday greeting, I was wondering about your guidance to the rest of us regarding masks. Do we do our greetings with a mask on? Do we do our meeting with a mask off? I think we should all follow the same protocol. So what guidance do you have for us?
The first point I'd make is I'm a tough act to follow. Mask on, mask off. It's going to be hard, I'm sure. But I went up, I had my mask in my hand, but I took it off to do the greeting. And I mentioned in my greeting about being safe and sane during the Thanksgiving season, and to ensure that they, practice their social distancing and wore their masks and limited their crowds and that kind of thing. But to answer your question, I didn't mask off, but I was just
Can I add some?
camera person.
May I add something, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor?
Sure, you may, of course.
I did it just before this evening's meeting, Mike. And ironically, Deputy Mayor, I mentioned something about safety during the holiday gatherings, but I did it mask off. So I think if we're looking for consistency, that's if that helps, so be it.
How long were your remarks?
Mine were about 30 seconds.
Oh,
about 30 to 45 seconds.
Oh, okay.
So I think it looks better.
Okay, well,
to answer your question, Mike, I think it's better to do mask off.
Ian and I are planning on doing ours tomorrow.
Great.
And so we can do them mask off, and that's fine. I appreciate that. I did go out to the location of the food drive at the police department this past week. It was an odd weather day where it would rain and then it would be nice and then it would rain. And was also glad to see that there is a significant number of West Pierce firefighters there, assisting with waving down traffic and helping direct folks to be able to go and do that. And I'm glad that the outcomes of that were exceeded expectations to be able to go and do that. And I certainly want to wish all of you, okay, and along the Thanksgivings that you're hoping for, given that you've made plans within this current environment, and would echo Council Member Simpson's fair to remember and have good wishes for all of our citizens the Springbrook neighborhood has organized itself to get a drive-by Thanksgiving dinner pickup in lieu of their Thanksgiving meal served at Centerforce. And I'm going to get a chance to go out and help pass out a few meals to be able to go and do that on Wednesday evening. And that's all I have, Mr. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, sir. Ms. Moss, did we already get you?
No, you didn't, but thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to agree with Councilmember Farmer that our side is better. So no tears, but it's better. And I had an opportunity, every Saturday I walk around Wahop Lake, and last Saturday was a beautiful day, and the eagles were out in all their glory. It was really pretty to see. And I walked down to the new parking area in the Dogs Park. It looks really nice, and there was not a lot of open spots there, so it is being used, and it looks very nice. So just wanted to share that. Thank you. That's all I have.
Well, already got you. Are you all done? He's focused. Well, I'll wrap it up then. The Economic Development Board had their monthly board meeting. I attended that last Friday. Lots of activity going on, as you might imagine, as they ramp up for their capital campaign for the next 5 years and their work plan. I indicated that we had passed our biennial budget, which included the provisions for our proportionate share of that, and they were very appreciative. We have our static parade coming up, I think on December 12th, right, Mr. Caulfield? That's the virtual tree lighting. I think I've got you on mute, or you're on mute there real quick. But I would encourage us to figure out how we may play a role in that, because it might be a nice way for council to be there for the residents in a safe way. So I don't know what the plan might be for that, but I would expect all of us to kind of have that afternoon available so that we can be there. It might be the first time we actually see each other, from a 6+ foot distance away, but it would be nice to see one another. Do you know, Mr. Caulfield, what the plan yet is for that?
We'll be in touch with you, Deputy Mayor.
Okay. So just kind of a warning in order to be around and available if you can be for that. I think it'll be a nice opportunity. And certainly want to wish everyone well for a happy and safe holiday season. And I think we all received Mr. Simpson's kind note. And so we need to probably talk a little bit about that. We're not going to say anything tonight. We're going to save the roast for a later date, Mr. Simpson. But we do need to get a little guidance from Mr. Caulfield about next steps and when we might start that process by which we advertise and interview for that position. So I don't want to say la vie yet, Mr. Simpson. We're going to have to roll up our sleeves and have a fun roast or something to toast your honor.
I'm sure Caulfield will take the lead in that one.
I'm sure he will.
Actually, Deputy Mayor, there's no money in the budget for anything like that.
Yep.
So if the council wishes to do that, we can pick that up as part of the carry forward adjustment in April of next year.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly.
Rather May of next year.
Yeah, perfect.
I like it. Good,
Sure,
John.
scrape
Good.
together $5.92 to make it happen. So other than that, I think I want to wish everyone well. It's been kind of a crazy couple of weeks, and this should be a nice opportunity to celebrate in a very limited way with your nuclear family. My kids, we had to cancel, of course, their trip out and our trip to New York for Thanksgiving, as I'm sure many families had to do as well. So enjoy your time together, and we will see you next week. Unless anything else for the good of the order, Mr. Caulfield?
Actually, Mayor, I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor, your next meeting will actually be Wednesday, December 2nd, which will be a joint meeting with your state legislators. And then your next regular meeting will actually be 2 weeks from today on December 7th.
I stand corrected. Thank you. All right, folks. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you all.
Everybody.
Sure. Bye-bye.